All right, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. If everyone's ready, we have Evan on having some mic difficulties, and we have Jenny here. Just to remind everyone, the special meeting is to conclude the process that we started last meeting for the at-large appointment, where no action was taken as a result of a tie vote. And also, the second item will be to resume the table vote to appoint an AWD trustee. So first, the agenda item is the at-large appointment. We've invited each candidate to introduce themselves and explain why they're interested in serving. In the crafting of this agenda item, we've limited each to 5 minutes speaking if they desire that amount of time. And I was going to say have Evan go first because he's online, but technical difficulties if he's...
What about Steve? No, okay, Steve's not with us. Steve's Sewell. Steve's Sewell.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go to, so just informal reminder, so we did have nominations, but we will, just to follow good process, we should just redo the nominations because there was no action taken last week. There are no new candidates, technically, if there was one. So I will open the floor to nominations, and that will be opened until all nominations are received and then closed, and then we'll go over to the candidates as it's on our agenda. So do we have any nominations for this position?
This is
at-large appointment to
who did we nominate before? We had.
Oh, I guess we have to read.
Right, we're just redoing the nominations because there was no action.
Air conditioning.
It was
Evan
and Janet.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So, okay. Well, I nominate Evan.
Okay, we have a nomination for Evan. Are there other nominations?
I would nominate Janet Joseph.
Okay, thank you. Hearing no others, we will close nominations, and let's get to the request of if candidates would like to speak. Janet, seeing he's having difficulty, would you like to say anything?
Sure. Yeah, she could set up anyone
Yeah,
else's
certainly.
request.
However you would prefer, whatever is comfortable, absolutely.
So I want to thank you for inviting me to speak to you directly about why I might be interested in serving on LawPAC. I wrote some notes down because I knew I had not more than 5 minutes, and I'm going to go from there. I know that you've already read my application, and so I thought maybe telling you a few things about how I grew up and what I was exposed to growing up might give you some insight into why I'm interested in making sure that we all have access to clean water. I grew up in western Massachusetts, and our water came from Quabbin Reservoir, and I don't know if you're familiar with Quabbin, but it's like Lake Auburn. It has a filtration waiver and monitors its water quality by watershed protection methods.
It's good water, isn't it?
It's very good water, which I was just going to, that's a very good segue because growing up, I remember hearing my parents tell us how lucky we were to have such good water. And I realized as I got older that not everybody had access to such clean water, and I didn't really know too much about watershed protection and how you managed it. But as I got older, got married, our family moved to Southern Illinois, lived in a rural farming community, and we lived within a watershed where we didn't get our water from the lake, but
Go ahead.
where we didn't get our water from the lake, but we lived within the watershed and became very involved in teaching our children who were elementary school age ways of protecting the water, even though we didn't use it, because what we did had an impact on its water quality. So we did things like develop a vegetative buffer to filter the runoff from the property, learned to manage our septic system, planted native species to build a habitat for birds and encourage wildlife, minimized our use of toxic products in and outside of the house to make sure that we didn't contribute to environmental damage. And a couple things that happened while we were there. One day we went out and there was a horrible odor, and we realized that our neighbor's septic system had failed. It was leaking. It was visibly leaking, and it was within 50 feet of the lake shore, and the neighbors weren't even aware that this was happening. And they didn't know how to address the problem. They were clearly not taking care of their septic system, and it made me realize that there's a lot that we need to know about in terms of protecting water quality when you live within a watershed, and maybe even when you don't. Another thing was a high school project that tested the water in the Umbra River, which was what supplied the lake that the town got their water from. And it was contaminated with agricultural runoff. And again, unaware, this came up with kids in chemistry class testing the water for an assignment. And it influenced one of our daughters to become an environmental engineer and continued to work on water quality issues. She worked on a research project with National Science Foundation that worked on removing contaminants, disinfection contaminants, and pharmaceutical pollutants. Traveled to Cameroon to work with Engineers Without Borders to bring clean water to a village there. And again, although I wasn't directly involved in that, I became inherently aware of the fact that it was everyone's responsibility to make sure that we did everything we could to protect our environment. Our actions have consequences, and that it's much better to keep the water, to protect the water, that clean water that we have, than to go back and try to fix a problem that we've created on our own. When we moved to Auburn and moved into the Lake Auburn watershed, we felt that it was our responsibility to be good stewards of the lake and to maintain our property. We, on a personal level, have implemented best practices for protection both inside and outside of our home. And I think that serving on LawPAC would just give me an opportunity to broaden my contribution to the community by taking an active role in the activities that are geared to maintaining the watershed and working on protecting Lake Auburn for our future, our generation, and those that come beyond. If there's an old Iroquois philosophy that says that in every deliberation we need to consider the impact of our decisions for the next 7 generations. So what we do now has a long-lasting effect.
How's your septic system?
How's our septic
Yeah.
system? Ours works well.
As I expected.
Right, it doesn't...
They have a world record septic system.
That's right.
It is the longest
right.
probably in the state.
Well, thank you very much for taking
very
time
much.
to visit us and give us
Sure.
your reasons for wanting to be on.
Great.
And I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Take care.
Okay. Because we have a question, are we technically done?
Thanks for
here,
coming in.
or are we-
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Evan, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we
Yes.
can. Absolutely. So you've been with us for a little bit. Janet just spoke, and if you'd like, you can have 5 minutes to speak, up to 5 minutes, if you're interested.
Sure. All right, so I guess since Janet gave a little bit of background, I'll give a little background about myself. I grew up in Auburn. I've lived in several areas throughout Auburn, some of them within the watershed, some without. I have drawn water from a well and have used the public drinking water as well. In fact, I've been on public drinking water much longer than I was on a well. I currently live in the Court Street neighborhood, and so utilize public drinking water. I have 2 daughters that attend schools in Auburn, and of course they utilize the drinking water. My parents live in Auburn, and they're also on city water. I've also served on, but in terms of service, I have served on the Auburn Planning Board. I did that for nearly 12 years. acting as chair or vice chair for about half of that time. I also have served on LawPEC and was elected chair of that body as well. And that was during a time when there was a lot of activity coming out of City Hall, but not a lot of systems in place within LawPEC to sort of be able to respond to what was going on with regard to proposed changes. So while on LawPEC, one of the things that I did do was work with the vice chair to start pushing forward bylaws, rules of order. We had a small committee, formed a small committee. I was not on that committee. I felt it was important to have shared leadership. So some other members of the commission were on that committee, and the commission ultimately did develop some rules of orders and bylaws that have helped it to sort of better respond to questions about what's going on in the watershed. The reality being that LawPEC, when it comes to anything the city does, can really only act in an advisory role. For the most part, you guys know that even with regard to AWD, they can only mostly act in an advisory role unless they're willing to indemnify the Board of Trustees, in which case they can kind of move forward a little bit. But the point being that it was really important to be able to make sure that LawPEC was able to respond to what was going on. While on LawPEC, I was a little disheartened to hear one of the trustees last time sort of make some discussions about what I might do on LawPEC. What I might do on LawPEC is what I did last time. The record's pretty clear. So really about rules, policy, procedure. There are very clear rules for what LawPEC should and should not be doing. And so, there's a question about purchasing land. I was actually part of purchasing land for LawPEC, part of those votes to do so, as well as discussing recreation within the watershed. Actually voted multiple times, much to the chagrin of at least one other commissioner, to limit recreation and not include further recreation, specifically because that's what LawPEC is charged with doing. It's a low impact recreation. And the idea being that LawPEC's really, it's not its sole purpose, but its primary purpose is to protect the filtration waiver. And understanding that is important, that it's not just about protecting the quality of the water, it's specifically about maintaining that filtration waiver. And I've done work on that in the past, like I said, because I've been served on LawPEC. I did have to step aside, but I feel like it's a good time for me to get back into it. I feel like I've got the time to devote to it that it requires again. And it would be my hope to just continue to do the work of LawPEC as it's moving forward, and continuing to navigate some of the changes that we're seeing in policies and ordinances within the watershed, and acting as a responsible voice for input, but also implementation of what those changes might be. And so really the reason I would like to be on LawPEC again, and you guys already read my application, is really to continue some of that work that I was able to do before that I felt I kind of had to step aside from for a moment. So I guess that's my 5 minutes. I've gone a bit over.
Thank you, Evan. I appreciate it. Appreciate both candidates coming to speak to us. And,
Thank you, Evan.
Much appreciated. So from this point, we have the two nominations. I think we can take them in order like we did last time, unless there's objection. And the first person nominated was Evan. So if there's no further deliberations desired from last week, does anybody have anything to add? So can we move ahead, and I'd like to call for a vote on our first nominee, Evans here. All in favor of appointing Evan? Okay, we have 4. And all opposed? 2 with 1 absent. And Evan passes, so we have no need to move on. I do appreciate, just have to make a personal note that I do know Janet briefly from my time volunteering at the community center, and I do appreciate her point of view, and I appreciate her time coming out. She and Evan, I believe personally, were supremely qualified, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I wish you always had this, 2 qualified candidates like this for every.
Absolutely. So
She'll be on it next year. I
moving to our next item on our agenda. This item is to complete the AW trustee appointment that was tabled. Dan was the most recent appointment, has expressed interest, and Trustee Dennis has also expressed interest in serving. In this case, our bylaws don't specifically specify a procedure of election among members, so I'll ask that we follow the same process unless the group, so as any time there's not anything in the bylaws about a specific, it defaults to how a normal motion would go. I'm asking that we follow the nomination process, but with Dennis not here, I guess I'm not sure how we, as a group, choose to proceed. So
It's obviously nominated. Or
so what I would propose is that we open the floor to nominations as before. However, I'm open to, since it's not in our bylaws, if there's strong feelings by anybody, I'm open to hearing it.
So, a couple of clarifying points here. It's a tabled item. So, it picks up exactly where it left off. So there's already 2 nominees. After nominations were taken, Dan moved
I don't
to...
think did we nominate
Yes.
in the last?
There were two nominees, and after nominations, Dan moved to table. I seconded it. It was a unanimous vote.
Okay,
So, in order to conduct that business, the Board of Trustees cannot just proceed, they have to take it from the table. Before the Board of Trustees decides if they want to do that, I would recommend that they not take this item from the table today, and they take this item from the table and act on it at the regular meeting later this month. The reason is that there has been an ethics complaint filed with the City of Auburn directly pertinent to the business that we're going to take up, alleging that the statements that I'm going to make about the nominees is an ethics violation under the rules of the City of Auburn. And
I point out that the way we handle ethics violations is through a process that at our next regular meeting, we follow an executive session.
this is
and
something
there's
completely
nothing public.
different. This is completely different. This has nothing to do with the ethics rules of the Auburn Water District. This is the ethics rules of the City of Auburn. The City of Auburn's process is completely an open public process. That's not my point. My point is that the...
How does it pertain to our...
It pertains because the issue at hand that'll be heard by the Auburn Ethics Panel tomorrow is that the statements that I will make during this election process are an ethics violation. So I've let the Board of Trustees know that I am positioned to make those statements today if you take it off the table. In deference to the complainant, it would seem that the Board of Trustees should not take this from the table today. We'll hear what the Auburn Ethics Panel has to say tomorrow, and if the Ethics Panel finds that the complaint is correct, I would not make those statements. If the Ethics Panel doesn't find that the complainant's allegations are correct, then when it's taken from the table, I'll make those statements. So I guess my point is, in deference to the complainant, you shouldn't take this from the table, because if in fact that's correct, we won't have that discussion. If the complainant isn't correct, no harm has been done, because the same statements will be made. So to me...
But what harm would be done if we proceeded?
Well, The complaint is that that it's an ethics violation to make these statements.
Me on you.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'm telling the Board of Trustees,
I
I'm gonna
can't-
make.
Honestly, from this position, I have one job, which is to execute this agenda, and I can't,
Was this at 4 or 4:30?
Four.
I can't
Sorry.
give you my opinion on something that hasn't happened, so.
I thought we were just coming to re-vote.
We
because it
didn't
was
vote on
tied.
this. No, we didn't vote.
We didn't
We
vote.
didn't vote on this, we tabled it.
And my point's simply this, right? An allegation's been made by a trustee that the conversation that's going to take place is an ethics violation. That hearing is going to happen in the city of Auburn tomorrow. So it would seem prudent to wait until we see what the ethics panel says, and if the ethics panel says the complainant is correct, and that the information shouldn't be discussed, then it won't be. And it would seem that that would be a prudent approach by the Board of Trustees to wait and see what they say in deference to the trustee who has made this complaint. There's no harm in waiting until the regular meeting.
Okay, thank you, and it is the board's decision, so let's hear from the board. Are there other opinions?
I'm ready to
Was
proceed.
this,
Wait,
yeah,
is this a procedural?
was
issue
this
being discussed?
ethics, whatever it was, filed before our last meeting?
No,
Not
directly
exactly.
after the last meeting.
After the last meeting. After we had tabled.
So the recommendation, we have a recommendation, which I'm not sure that needs a formal motion, but it's recommending that we not take up the tabled item because of something we don't have details about, where this is where I'm confused, admittedly, don't understand the full details, so the board has to make a decision. Do we proceed with this vote, or do we wait,
Adjourn.
as is suggested?
Yeah, he's, the mayor is obviously using this to try to prevent me from being on the commission one more meeting. And I'm ready to proceed, so that's just my personal.
Do we have to make a motion to proceed?
No, we
No.
don't. We have nominations and we'll proceed in order.
No,
Well, we'll open the floor to
No.
nominations to do the,
it's a tabled item. You'd have to have a vote of the Board of Trustees to take it off the table, but
okay, well, so the item is on the table. So we have this as an agenda item, and we're here to discuss this item. We're discussing it. So the question is, to the board, is there desire by a majority to proceed, or are we putting it back on the table?
But won't the motion to take it off the table kind of tell you that?
Is that, I don't think that was a motion, that's why, yes.
Can I ask you, have you discussed in the bylaws what it says about table motions?
I have not.
It says that something that's on the table can only be taken off the table at the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Okay.
So this not being a regularly
What-
scheduled meeting.
But we did date specific, right? No, we didn't?
so
No,
here.
but I think what you're saying, and I'm not reading it, so I'm taking your word for what it says, but you're saying it can't be taken off the table. It's on the table now,
This was a scheduled meeting.
Yeah.
and it's,
No,
This isn't a special
no,
meeting.
stop. Just please,
So-
just to clarify, he's saying it cannot be taken off the table now, today. We're here to address this issue at this meeting, so it needs to be voted on. We could have taken it off is that what you're saying? We could have taken it off at the next regularly scheduled meeting?
Yeah,
But we're here for this specific purpose,
so,
and a
so,
special meeting to finalize this agenda.
Yeah.
so.
We have some
Yeah.
opinions. Are there others that wish? Bob, Eric, Kevin?
I think we should deal with it now. That's why we were here.
So listen, you can proceed, the vote will be invalid. Here's how this works. Robert's Rules of Order is, by the bylaws, is how this board operates. Under Robert's Rules of Order, a tabled item can be brought up again at the meeting in which it's tabled or at the next regular meeting, unless it is, it could be brought up in an intervening special meeting, which this is, if it's noticed on the agenda. Except, under Robert's rules, any bylaws of the organization take precedent. If we have a bylaw that says, and Dennis can tell us where this is in here, that says that tabled items can only be taken up at the next regular meeting, that's all you can do. You can't take it up at a
So I'll make a
special
motion
meeting.
to suspend the rules.
I don't think we need to. Just to clarify and step back a minute. We've made a specific agenda item. You're saying the agenda item's invalid, if that's what your question? I just
No,
wanna
the
make
agenda
sure.
item's not invalid.
So this is our special meeting
Yep.
to cover this.
We tabled it for.
We had tabled it.
For this date.
No, we
At the
didn't.
last meeting.
Okay.
So we're here to discuss it and we need
Yeah,
to
yeah. Yeah.
carry the,
So I'll make a motion to suspend the rules to proceed today.
okay, we have a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay, so Eric, excuse me, Kevin. So we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and proceed. All in favor?
That wasn't a vote in favor.
Okay. Okay, we have 4 all opposed, 3 opposed. So we will,
So the motion fails. Suspension of the rules requires two-thirds vote of the body. So 4 votes,
do we have the bylaws right there?
it's
Verify that.
it's in Robert's rules.
Is it in our bylaws? Can we just double check if you have a copy? I'll look it up. I apologize for the procedure.
Just in case these gentlemen are wrong, I think we should proceed, and they can
You
deal
can't
with.
proceed.
We can proceed.
No, you can't. You're in violation of the rules. You can't conduct business in violation of the rules just because you think you want to.
So this, I
Because
just
this
want to
has been an
summarize
agenda
where,
for 2
let's
weeks.
It
let's
doesn't
summarize
matter
where
what
we
the
started,
agenda
please,
says.
just to be civil.
No, we're reading the
You
first
started
one.
with a recommendation to not take this up because of what you would say,
Correct.
believing that someone else is going to accuse you that saying those things is unethical. I didn't
Yep,
fully.
yep. So that's fine.
Dumbing it down.
But the point
But
is
we're-
so my recommendation was just to not take it off the table. But Dennis has raised the point that you can't take it off the table at a special meeting. I was just assuming, I hadn't looked at the bylaws to see what it said about tabled items. Under Robert's rules, you have an agenda. It's noticed on the agenda. It allows a tabled item to be taken off the table prior to the next regular meeting at a special meeting if it's noticed on the agenda. But Robert's rules also says that any specific bylaw or rule that an organization has takes precedence. So if our bylaws say you cannot take a tabled item off the table until the next regular meeting, you can't do it.
Meaning we must vote.
No, you can't vote.
So here's what it says.
At the next regular meeting.
Where are you?
But this agenda item, you're saying, therefore, is invalid.
No.
We shouldn't have made this
No,
agenda
no,
item.
no. Well,
Because that's what the implication is. We did have this on the agenda, public notice.
Yeah, so
We're here to discuss this
Right.
item, which was tabled until now,
yeah,
not till the
it
next
was not
meeting.
tabled till now.
It was. We said,
No, it
we'll table
wasn't.
this until
No, you
the
did
special
not.
meeting.
You
If
did
you look
not.
at the video, it's the next regular or special meeting. I made the
So-
table.
So a tabling motion, it doesn't matter if you said the next regular or table. That's
Well, that
not
was
what the
the
motion
intention.
is.
You know, I think that,
So here's what the bylaws say. It says tabled items will be taken up under old business at the next regular meeting of the Board of Trustees unless it has voted to postpone the matter to a later date certain. Okay, so that's not completely clear.
but it doesn't specifically address our ability to
Sure it does.
say at this date certain specifically.
I
It
think
doesn't
does,
say.
but under the suspension of the rules, the other one is that section 15, that any provision of these rules not governed by the charter or other law may be suspended at any meeting of the Board of Trustees by a vote of 5 or more trustees.
Okay,
The vote on suspension of the rules shall be entered in the minutes.
well, thank you, that all fails. So we're back to, I think, the question, and I still believe this is a board decision, not a procedural decision. I think we have this item on the agenda, and there's a question, is the board taking this up now?
So,
Yeah, but we have procedure that we're supposed to follow. We can't just keep breaking procedure, can we, Jason?
I don't agree that what
Yeah, I
you
don't
said
agree either,
has
so.
specifically
I mean, we're not
said-
lawyers, so you
We
guys
would,
may.
we would, and we did run these
You
agenda
could have brought
items
this
by our
up to
attorney.
Mike 2 weeks
So-
ago, a week ago.
Dan,
I mean,
please.
I'm sorry.
Just, I think that the ability to have a vote at a special meeting on this item is within our purview if we desire, and there's nothing that prohibits us, because that says
Yeah.
at the next regular meeting, it doesn't specify we can't. Now, we're not sitting here and doing the thorough review of.
It specifically says you can.
it says that it's gotta be
It
taken
was
up
tabled.
under old business at the next regularly scheduled meeting.
And it says what else after that?
Or the Board of Trustees, unless it has voted to postpone the matter to a later date.
So we did
And that was
postpone the
the-
matter
that was-
to this date, sir.
that was the
And it is
intention.
on this
The motion was
agenda
not to
as the-
postpone. The
I
motion
don't,
is
I
to
won't
table.
debate the motion, but we have an agenda that tells us what
I
is
don't
on
matter.
it, based on what our motion was.
What
If
if
the
the
agenda
agenda
is
may be
invalid-
out of order?
But if the agenda is out of order, then we'll have to deal with it and come back to it. And I believe, as it is, so,
What's the worry? Just come back with your lawyers if it doesn't work out.
You just had a motion to suspend the rules to take the item up that failed. You can't take the item up. Take the item up at the next
So
meeting.
what do we have
I
a special
think the
meeting
vote
for?
to
I know.
suspend the rules was under the presumption
What do we
that
have it for?
you were correct
Why did we
in
agree to
assuming.
We just had an item that we took up under the agenda on the special meeting.
It's a waste of time.
Can I take the temperature down a bit?
Yes,
So when's the next slot back meeting?
14, I think?
7 days.
next week.
Next week.
And that's part of the reason, again, going
We
back,
had
we
the
did
special
decide
meetings
to
to
have
get
a
somebody
special
going
meeting because we
before
wanted
this-
these two positions
Yeah.
filled ahead of it. So thank you for that clarification. I don't think that was an invalid attempt, and if we go ahead with the vote, as if the board desires, then there's some other evidence that shows the vote is invalid, then we will have to make an adjustment. I think that's our course of action.
When it was tabled, if it was tabled, as Dan said, or regular scheduled meeting or special meeting, if he said that when it was voted to be tabled, does that change where you guys stand?
Well,
I'm just
I'm
asking.
not a lawyer.
I know, I'm not either.
Yeah.
But a postponement is treated differently than a table
We definitely
in the bylaws.
Right.
worded it as tabling.
And it is in Robert's rules as well. A tabling motion is different than a postponement motion.
I'm ready to
Okay.
proceed, Jason.
When we had said we were tabling it until the special meeting, I mean, if you pull up the video, I'm sure you can see where it says that. So I guess the wording wasn't proper.
We
It should have said postpone the vote until postpone instead of table.
I don't think the wording has anything to do with the fact that we have, yes, you can, if someone wants to challenge it, we have a process that we can go through, we can consult our attorney. I'm feeling not very good about the reasons behind this, and I understand what's going on. There's a lot of, like Dennis said, the temperature in the room might be hotter than it needs to be. So what I would like to do is bring us back to the agenda item we have.
Thank you.
You can't
not
handle
any-
this agenda item, Jason. If you have a question about this, you need to consult with the attorney about whether you
I
can
don't
go
have any
forward.
question that there is an item on our agenda that we did run by our attorney, and that we do have the ability
Jeff, you
and
said
the
your
majority
piece.
to
We've heard
vote
it.
on this item. If you disagree, you may abstain or seek other means after to
Seek
have
your
us
means.
revisit the issue. If there's something
Do
incorrect,
we have
that's
the
the
minutes
proper
from the
procedure.
prior meeting?
I do not.
What's the wording of the motion?
I do not have the minutes right here from the prior meeting.
So let me. just
On the
one-
agenda,
Just one more
it's here.
thing.
Yes.
I think we could wait, but, so when a question is under debate, the president shall receive no motion except recess the meeting, lay something on the table, call the question to end the debate, postpone to a date certain, refer to a committee for some, or postpone indefinitely. So a postponement is a word that's used in here. It's a technical word.
Yep.
And so is putting something on
Well,
the table.
I'm
And that may
calling
be,
the
but
vote,
we,
so
but-
I'm calling the question.
and
Jason,
so
that's it.
Okay. So
Let's just proceed and go home.
stepping back a minute, we did have this agenda looked at by our attorney, and again, if there's something that has to be revisited, there's a process for doing that. I suggest we follow through with our process where I had started this was to entertain nominations and proceed in the same manner that we did previously with the other two.
Which we already have our nominations.
So we have the nominations, but we redid them for the other two. I would, just going through the steps, I would like to open the floor to nominations for these two positions. Dennis,
Can I give my elevator speech about why I'm here?
are you nominating yourself? Because I'm
I'll
opening the
nominate
floor to
myself.
nominations, and yes, you do have the ability to speak on your behalf if
So
you're nominating
Yeah,
yourself.
so I probably want to put my hat in the ring, except for 2 months ago at the meeting, Dan said if nobody else was interested, he would continue to do it. So as a longtime board member on a lake association, like 25 years, overseeing 2 lakes, I thought, well, I don't drink the water from those lakes, so maybe I ought to spend my time dealing with a lake that I drink water out of. And so I was interested, I decided I was interested. And the other part about it was, in terms of talents, I've got 2 degrees, Bachelor's of Science, one in Natural Resources and Science Management, biology, zoology, botany, all that kind of stuff. I've got a mechanical engineering degree, so if it comes to talking about a filtration plant or any of that kind of stuff, I've got some inside knowledge on that kind of stuff. So if I hadn't resigned from the other board, I would probably have taken my hat out of the ring for this one, but I'm still interested in this position, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you, I appreciate it. So we have a nomination, and are there any other nominations while the floor is open?
Nominate Dan Gillett.
Okay. So
If Dan
unless
wants to
there's
speak or.
if other discussion, or if you wish to speak on your behalf, you're entitled to, certainly. Otherwise, I'll be closing the nominations and asking for a vote. Dennis, in order, was nominated first, and I would like to ask all in favor of appointing Dennis to the Protection Commission Board of Commissioners.
Vote?
Yes, please. We have 3 in favor, all opposed? There are 4 opposed? Okay.
Just for the record, I don't oppose you being on it, but
I understand.
the way the voting is kind of,
Well, I
and we
understand it's awkward to do it,
yeah.
so.
We have also done head-to-head, I think, for other things in the past, but we need to consider cleaning up bylaws would be a good way to proceed, I think, on some things. The next item, next person in order, nomination is Dan. I'd like to call for a vote. All in favor of appointing Dan to the Protection Commission. So we have 4.
Thank you.
All opposed? We have
3.
2 opposed?
Opposed, yes.
Okay, so 3 opposed.
They got 4
Okay.
anyways.
So we have made our appointment to the Protection Commission, and that is the last item on our agenda. Is there,
Motion to adjourn?
Well, before you adjourn, so what action are you gonna take as a president? You're gonna consult legal counsel about the,
absolutely, I do that every week, and I think this
Jeff, there was the motion to
should be.
adjourn, I'm sorry.
Did you hear a second?
hasn't
No,
been-
I just
Okay,
Has it been
interrupted.
seconded? You're correct.
Is anyone seconding that, or then you can speak?
I don't mind. I don't mind asking a question.
So I'll withdraw the motion.
So the question is, that there are apparent procedural violations. As a president, you decided to move forward even after a suspension of the rules. Are you going to bring this matter to the legal counsel?
Absolutely.
For
I
review.
speak with our attorney every week, and I do think that reviewing everything that's happened here is absolutely something we should discuss. Just make sure that we had our ducks in a row correctly first with the agenda items that we covered, and certainly listening to any, if there are concerns, have at it. I'm here to listen, so if something isn't correct, or we find that based on legal counsel something has to change, I'm open to it.
I mean, the vote it could be, I don't know, called null and void if it was,
I have no idea. I know we
see what the attorney says.
carried through with the agenda item,
I
and I think that we did the best we could with it. Let's just remind everybody, we're a volunteer board. We're not legal experts, as somebody said, and we proceeded like this much less formally, to be honest, in the past. And I think that that's something we can probably work on. So let's make sure we get it right and proceed.
Okay, and before we leave, I think just talking about section 9 and section 12, because I think those are the areas that we beat up on tonight.
Okay. Will do. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion to second, all in favor? Okay, thank you.